Welcome to Curiously Connected, the channel that connects you to places around the world and tells you something about them that makes you go, wow, I never knew that. In this modern age of globalization, did you know that there's a city in the frozen north of China that 100 years ago was a melting pot of cultures from all over the world and also provided sanctuary to Jews fleeing persecution in Europe? This is Harbin, an industrial city and the capital of Heilongjiang province in the far northeast of China. Harbin, despite having a metropolitan population of over 10 million people, is a relatively unknown city. Some of you may have heard of the Harbin International Ice and Snow Sculpture Festival, which modern-day Harbin has hosted annually since 1985, and is probably what Harbin is most famous for today. Curiously, however, Harbin once provided sanctuary to Jewish refugees fleeing persecution in Europe in the early 20th century. And this is the thing with Harbin. It's an inland Chinese city with freezing cold winter temperatures. Apart from the ice festival in modern times, what is it that could have spurred Harbin's original development? What else is there, apart from snow and ice, to the history of Harbin that attracted so many people to come here? Stay connected if you want to find out more, and please like this video and subscribe to the channel if you would like to discover more curious connections around the world. With the rise of anti-Semitism in Central and Eastern Europe in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Jews began to move abroad to escape persecution at home. They settled in different countries, most notably the United States, the United Kingdom, France, and over time in Israel, of course. Though not many people know that Harbin in China also became home to a vibrant community of Jews who had fled eastwards to set up new lives in Asia. Harbin may be one of the lesser known of the major cities in China, and even less is known about this brief chapter in its history during one of the most turbulent periods in modern times. When Joseph Kaspe set off on the newly constructed Trans-Siberian Railway from Moscow to Harbin in the early 1900s, the city was already a surprisingly cosmopolitan place. The Qing dynasty in China had given Russia permission to build a railway line from the city of Chita, crossing Chinese territory, thus reducing the overall time for the journey from Moscow to Vladivostok in the far east of Russia. This was called the China Eastern Railway Extension. It opened in 1901 and had several branches that centered on, of all places, Harbin, Joseph Kaspe's ultimate destination. Harbin grew rapidly along with the development of the railways. Joseph was heading east to make his fortune, like many others from Russia and other parts of Europe, and Harbin welcomed them. In fact, at its height, approximately 200,000 expatriates lived in Harbin, mainly Russians, but also Ukrainians, Poles, Germans, and Danes, amongst others. The Jewish community into which Joseph entered was particularly numerous in the city. When I visited Harbin, I stayed at the Hotel Modern on Zhongyang or Central Street. The hotel was founded by none other than Joseph Kaspe himself and opened its doors in 1914. It survives to this day and at its height was known for its elegance and sophistication, attracting many wealthy and influential guests, including politicians, artists, and intellectuals to the city. You can wander through the hotel and explore the interior. It feels like nothing has changed since those days over 100 years ago. There are photos everywhere showing the history of the hotel itself and the city. The Hotel Modern is definitely the place I would recommend you stay or at least visit if you come to Harbin. It may not be the most modern hotel in the city today, but for me it certainly has the most character. The abiding impression one gets from exploring the streets around the Hotel Modern is that of a city with a history that is most certainly not just Chinese. The Hotel Modern is still famous for its modern or Madier ice cream, launched in 1906 by the same Joseph Kaspe. Queues form every day outside the cute serving window of the store selling this popular product. In fact, the streets around Zhongyang are full of shops selling Russian souvenirs. It's definitely touristy, but it's also fun to wander around and explore. This photograph in particular on the walls inside the Hotel Modern piqued my interest to explore other Jewish historical sites in the city. It was labelled in both Chinese and English. In English, it read, "In February 1922, Harbin Jewish Women Philanthropic Relief Association held the benefit sale activity in the modern hotel in order to save and help the refugees in Europe. When I looked at the picture, I thought it could have been taken during the Roaring Twenties in New York. It has that feeling. And it was indeed taken in the 1920s, though not in New York, but in a city on the other side of the world, Harbin, China. The Hotel Modern and Zhongyang Daje are located in an area of Harbin called the Daoli District, on the east side of the Songhua River. The site of Harbin's famous ice festival is to the west. The east side, the Daoli District, is the old town of Harbin, containing most of the historical Jewish as well as other Russian and European sites of the city. Today, many of the historic buildings have been preserved and converted into restaurants, shops and museums. In fact, the Harbin local government has been trying to enhance the development of the city by focusing on this chapter of its Russian and European history. The Harbin Museum of Jewish History and Culture on Jingwei Street is the best place to start. It is located on the site of the former New Synagogue of Harbin, originally built in 1921 but closed again in the 1950s. In 2004, the Harbin municipal government restored the synagogue to its original architectural style and transformed the building into the fascinating museum that it is today. The history of the Jewish community in Harbin is told over several floors, with evocative pictures and photographs and snippets of information of Jewish life in Harbin at the time. You could easily spend several hours here before emerging back onto the streets of Harbin. Just a short walk away is the most famous and iconic European historical site in Harbin, St. Sophia's Cathedral. The St. Sophia Orthodox Cathedral was also built around the same time as Hotel Modern, actually in 1907, just after the completion of the Trans-Siberian Railway. The church fell into ruin following the establishment of the People's Republic of China, serving as a warehouse and surrounded by other buildings that blocked it from view. The same fate befell many other historic sites in Harbin at the time. However, the Chinese government recognized St. Sophia's Cathedral in 1996 as a National Cultural Heritage Site, and since then the building has been restored to its former glory, now serving as the Municipal Architecture and Art Museum. The area around the cathedral has also been developed and is now a popular Instagram and selfie spot. Another short walk takes you to the Harbin Old Synagogue Concert Hall, which served as the original synagogue of Harbin from 1909 to 1963. It reopened as a major concert hall in the city in 2014. Next door is the No. 2 Korean Middle School. This was originally the Jewish middle school, constructed in the late 1910s. The Jewish cemetery in Harbin, now known as the Huangshan Harbin Jewish Cemetery, is also a must-see for those who visit Harbin and are interested in its Jewish history. Initially established in the Daoli district, it was extended and eventually moved in 1958 to the Huangshan area on the outskirts of the city. Today, it has been maintained and beautified with a Star of David monument erected there in 2006 in collaboration with the Israeli government. The source of the curious connection or great connector here is the Trans-Siberian Railway, which was completed as far back as 1904. The original idea for the railway has been attributed to Tsar Alexander III of Russia, and construction of the railroad began in 1891. With a direct route from Moscow through to Vladivostok, stopping at Harbin, finally opening in 1904. The Trans-Siberian Railway and the great flow of people, culture and ideas it created can truly be considered an example of globalization of yesteryear. Further lines, completely within Russian territory, perhaps a true Trans-Siberian Railway, were opened in 1916. This route was developed due to fears of an impending Japanese invasion of Manchuria, following the Russo-Japanese War of 1904 to 1905. There were hints even then that geopolitics were shifting. So what happened to the Jewish community in Harbin? They were not immune to the geopolitical and social upheavals that were to strike the region in the following decades. The Japanese Imperial Army did indeed invade Manchuria in 1931 and took over Harbin in 1932. The case of Simeon Kaspe, son of our very own Joseph Kaspe, founder of the Hotel Modern, is perhaps tragically indicative of how life deteriorated for the citizens of Harbin. In 1933, Simeon, an aspiring pianist, was kidnapped. Following his father's refusal to negotiate with the kidnappers, the Kaspe family received a package containing Simeon's ears. Simeon was tortured for several months and eventually killed. There was widespread outrage at the time towards the then Japanese authorities, who had ignored protests from various sources. The political situation, notwithstanding such horrific events, led many to desert Harbin, initially to Tianjin and Shanghai, with the majority then eventually leaving for Israel, the UK, the US, or other places around the world. Harbin has moved on from those darker days. Hannah Agre, reportedly one of the last remaining Jewish people in Harbin, passed away in her late 70s in 1985. It was also in 1985 that Harbin's main annual attraction, the Harbin International Snow and Ice Festival, was born. This spectacular event makes for a fabulous visit to the city in and of itself. Modern Harbin continues to embrace its past and look to the future. There are many other things to see whilst on a visit to the city, such as the Harbin Siberian Tiger Park or the ominous Unit 731 Museum, neither of which we have even mentioned today. However, Harbin's own curious connection to its Jewish past certainly adds a unique layer of depth to any visit to the city. In fact, the mix of Chinese, Jewish, Russian, and other European cultures that have influenced Harbin's history show that it was indeed a true 20th century melting pot, making Harbin a fascinating place to visit as part of a wider tour of the country.